Hi, welcome to Military Museum Moment MMM2013.3. I'm Joe Horvath, Museum Educator. We're going to talk about how to care for your collections that might include sea rations. Now, the evolution of the military ration in the 20th century started in World War I. The first rations, canned rations, were an emergency ration issued to troops that were supposed to be opened not to be opened except by order of an officer or in extremities. And it might contain meat or tin. Now this is a reproduction one, so this is perfectly safe. From the emergency ration of World War I, they evolved into the sea rations of World War II. And the letter C is just a designation that the Quartermaster Corps gave to canned rations. You had A, B, C, D, and K rations in World War II. You look them up. It's a pretty fascinating history. Now, from the canned rations of sea rations in World War II, the combination of the C ration and the K ration produced what was known as the meal combat individual of the Vietnam era. And that's mostly what a lot of people still have in their bunkers and lockers are those C rations. And out of those canned rations, what evolved was the ration we know today as the MRE, Meals Ready to Eat. Now what we're going to be doing is taking some of the C rations that were from the 1960s and removing the contents, because even though a ration is inside a can, that does not mean it's going to last forever. If you could pull in a little tighter here, you can see these are our for-use collections. And these package right here contains cheese and some, I believe they're all cheese. And as you can see, the rations are bubbling out. So the cheese and the contents of these cans are actually corrosive to the can, and in time they're going to bubble out. So imagine if you have these tucked away somewhere in a foot locker, or if you're a reenactor in your kit and you haven't visited it in a while, you're going to have quite a mess on your hands. So what we're going to do is remove the can, preferably the bottom if possible, with a opener that opens along the seal. And we're going to use some tongue depressors cut to various sizes to remove the contents, place them into a garbage bag, and then we're going to wash the can in some soapy water, and then use a series of clean water to clean the can, and then place the can in the sun, which is we don't recommend that for collections, to put things in the sun, but in this case here, we want to make sure that the can is dried and that the UV light from the sun is going to kill any sort of mold, fungi, bacteria, anything that be on these rations. So our technical help today is going to be our intern Kelsey Mulseed from Juniata College, and we'll get started. Okay, what we're going to do now is that since these things have a potential of really stinking kind of bad, we're going to don the M17A1 gas mask, which is my own personal ownership. And this cuts down on nuclear, biological, chemical warfare environments. Also is good for CS gas, tear gas, and it should be good for stinky tuna and cheese and beans. Kelsey, check your seal. Got a good seal? Okay, let us begin.
Push that on there.
Yep, you just hold it on there and just push that down. We're doing the bottom here. We're using one of these openers that opens along the seal. This is a can of tuna. And yum, yum. Come out. Now we're going to use our, well, I can smell that from here. I don't have a gas mask on. How are you? Are you smelling it?
A little.
Okay. Well, that makes it, you want to get rid of it pretty fast. Now we're going to place it and let it soak in our soapy water, very soapy water. lid as well. And on to our next can. Pick up on the handle. There you go. Yes, as you can see, that's just rotten through, and Lord knows it looks like it might be beans and stew. Actually, there's not much smell to that because it's kind of dried out already. So the Quartermaster Corps, back in the past, would find these old rations, and what they had done is they would actually take the contents out and have them analyzed so that they could see what various minerals and vitamins and I guess how healthy stuff was in the past. But I do recall reading that they would do some scientific observation as to what were in the contents of these rations. And they did this as even including some rations that went on some polar expeditions. So the British had some rations that they had taken. Go with maybe 2 or 3 other rinses too if you really want to get them nice and clean. Now we're going to take them out, put them in a nice brilliant sun, and just let them dry face up so that the sun does its work and kills any remaining spores. We're starting on our cheese and jelly. This is blackberry jam from Meals Combat Individual MCI. And well, it looks black. I don't know if it's jelly or berry. The Meals Combat Individual, the MCI, is what we had also called C rations in the 60s. And as I had mentioned before, there were different types of rations. And they started the designation back in World War II. A rations were fresh rations. A rations were fresh meat and vegetables prepared by the mess chief. B rations were canned rations that were in large portions for like 20 or so individuals. And the C rations were the individual cans for an individual soldier. And D rations were an emergency ration that was designed by the Quartermaster Corps and given to Hershey to manufacture. It was an emergency ration. It was chocolate, but it didn't taste, it was said to have tasted slightly better than a boiled potato. And they did that intentionally because they didn't want it to be the first thing that a soldier would eat. They wanted it to be the last thing. Within each bar of the D ration bar was something like 600 calories, which was meant to stave off starvation. And that was the intent of that. By the end of the war, there were millions and millions of those left that the Army tried to give back to Hershey, but they didn't want them. Then you had a ration in what's called the K ration. It was a ration designed for paratroopers to fit into their parachute pants. And that had a biscuit, a bread product, it had a meat product, it had a stick of gum, and some cigarettes, and an opener. And the K ration was very popular. It was very, very good for convenience. They had breakfast rations, and they had lunch rations and dinner rations. But again, I mentioned it was only designed for paratroopers until the story goes, General Patton said, please designate it something else so we can give it to his tankers. So they decided on identifying it as a K ration. And then after the war, they took the best of both worlds, the C ration of World War II and the K ration, and that's what produced the MCI, which is the Meal Combat Individual, used by troops all throughout the 60s and 70s up to the early 80s. And then by 1985, you had the meals ready to eat come into play, and that's what the mainstay of the emergency ration now is, and it's throughout the world. The MREs are used throughout the world in disaster relief. Now what we have here, we have peanut butter now.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
cheddar,
cheese.
cheddar cheese.
Cheddar cheese. And I'm going to hold the camera closer while I back away because that stuff does have an odor. Do you smell anything in that mask?
No.
No? Well, that mask is great. Fantastic. So Kelsey's going to continue the routine here with all these rations. And you'll notice we have them in bags so that they were stored that way in bags. And after we get done cleaning them, they will no longer need to be in bags. But if you do have them and you don't have the time to take them out or look at them yet or take care of them, you might want to place them in bags until you have time to do that. This certainly is a dirty job. We need Mike Rowe here. And there we have it. They're all nice and dry. And tomorrow what we're going to do is we will glue them together and wax them up. Okay, our cans have been cleaned and they've been dried, and we did note some interesting damage to the cans. This one in particular, this was the beef that was rotted out, and I'm not too sure if the camera can pick this up, but these look like lines on the cans, or actually it's rotted through and through. The can has been cantered out by the contents, which is again why you do not want to have these just sort of resting in a foot locker. So on some of them that we opened up, there might have been some damage, rusting on the inside, and we would treat that the same way as we treated our preserving a historic weapon. We would reduce the rust with some WD-40, clean the inside and the outside with some denatured alcohol or some low odor mineral spirits, and then we would wax everything up and as a preservative so that your fingers don't corrode the cans. That's good practice for any kind of metal objects, whether they're weapons or, in our case here, these sea ration cans. So Joe Horvath and Kelsey Mulseed with the Military Museum Military Museum MMM2013.3. Keep your collection secure.